What's going on, legend? Well, welcome back to Beyond the 90. We've got again very special guest for you today. We've got Ian, a Villa fan. Ian, how are you doing?
Great, thank you. Just been watching the Champions League draw, and we've got some nice ties in that, especially the home games against Juventus, Celtic, and Bayern Munich, and then a nice few trips away at the likes of Monaco and Young Boys. So yeah, very excited by that, and it's just nice to be a part of something like that. Like I can't believe I'm actually saying it to myself, but watching the Champions League draw live with Villa included, obviously not seen it in my lifetime. I'm 36 now. Back in '82 when we won it. I was just sort of a flicker in the parents' eyes at that stage. So yeah, it was just nice to be a part of. But yeah, I'm really well. Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, no, really, again, really happy to have you back. I think in terms of even this is, I don't know if you feel this, because this is where, as I growing up, with the same thing, probably you, for similar age, where people always used to talk about the good old days. And when you go down to the ground, and then I always used to think, shut up, we're not, this was when I was in the championship eras, where you're just like, shut up, we're not there. We're not going to get back there. We need to move on. Is it weird now? Because I had the same thing. It was like, I just can't believe my team's in there. Can't believe that we're going to get to do this. Or even if I don't get to go, I get to watch it on telly with my team. Is it quite sunk in? Because even after last season, with you getting top four, is it now the pennies hit, or has it just been over the summer? Because again, we'll get into the transfers later on, but is it quite sunk in about Champions League?
It took a few weeks for it, obviously, after that Tottenham game at Man City, where we knew we'd qualified before we played the last game of the season away at Crystal Palace. It took a few weeks after that to sink in, but I think now tonight, seeing that draw and seeing that live draw with the teams that we've got potentially, well,
Mhm.
coming to Villa Park, it has fully sunk in now. It seemed a bit surreal, and it was one of those where you go into the summer and the off season, and you don't really want the season to come around in a weird sense. You do, because
Mhm.
you know you've got Champions League, but does it get any better than that? That was the sort of sense that I had. I was like, I really want to enjoy my summer now, and the time off season, and really embrace what we've sort of collectively done as a squad and as a team. So it was a very surreal summer, and obviously it had been building from obviously when Unai took over, and then he managed to change us around so quickly after the Gerrard sort of scenario, and get us qualifying for Conference League. And to be fair, that was great as a Villa fan, being back in Europe. I remember going as a kid in sort of the early 90s when I first started going up to Villa Park with my dad and watching us play the likes of Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid. And those are sort of the memories in terms of European competition. And then we had a little spell, probably a 3-season spell under Martin O'Neill, obviously that you guys know well as well. Sort of 2006 onwards up to sort of 2010, where we were in Europe, but not really sort of putting our stamp on Europe in terms of the UEFA Cup as it was. And then obviously we had a few seasons in the Intertoto Cup as well. I remember when I was a bit younger. But yeah, this is something else on a whole different scale. And obviously you boys have got recent memories from sort of when you won the league and then went on to play in the competition. So I bet it's quite nice for you to think back to those times. And yeah, it's just a great time to be a Villa fan, to be honest.
Again, it is, and I think just advice, not just advice. It's just something that I would say to you: just enjoy not being terrible. And as bad as that sounds, you've mentioned the when things were wrong. We were just talking off camera about 26 to 2015, 2016 when we won the league and you got relegated. And there's lots of kind of juxtapositions of that as well. The part of it is just enjoy the journey without trying to overthink it too much. And was it kind of like that for the Conference League as well? And that was a different competition with different opponents, but in even in that season, it was all of us. I think take it back to about this time 2 seasons ago, probably about a couple of months. All of the Midlands clubs were terrible. Forest were down there, Leicester were down there, Wolves were down there, and you were down there. And after that time, you sacked Gerrard, you got in Emery, and you just shot straight up the table. Um, has it been a weird couple of years because you've gone from speaking to other Villa fans about the just awfulness of Steven Gerrard, not in terms of as a just what he brought to Villa Park, and it just didn't work out. Has it been a weird couple of years? Because for us, we've kind of, well, you've done this, we've done this, and then we're just starting to pick up momentum again.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a hell of a journey, I'll tell you, and it's just been so nice to actually, because when you've supported a team as long as I have, and you go to Villa Park, and I've been a season ticket holder over 30 years now, and in those sort of bad times, you just go out of sheer love of the club, and obviously all those friendships and sort of the camaraderie that you've built over the years with people that sit next to you in the Holt End, and obviously the away trips, they're just good days out, and you hope that it's a positive 90 minutes, but you don't let it wreck the day if it's not, because you know what you're fully expecting when you're down there, and sort of you're not playing that well, and you're not in a great stage. But yeah, the last 2 years have just been really surreal, and even the Conference League qualifying for that was a major thing for Villa fans, and I think it was that sheer relief that we were back and playing in Europe, not at Europe's top table, but I said to my dad at the time, I said, we are going to embrace this. We are going to try and do as many away games as possible. I think we managed to do 4 away games out of the games that we played in Europe last season. The only 2 that we couldn't do were due to ticket allocations. The game in Alkmaar, we only had 900 or so tickets. And then we played in Bosnia as well, and we only had 450 tickets for that. So that is your loyal list of your loyal fans that we're managing to get tickets for those games. We were in the sort of second criteria down, because we'd only managed to do, I think it was about 17 away games the season before in the Premier League. So we had sort of second hand, but we managed to do 4, and we fully embraced them, enjoyed every trip that we had. They all offered something a little bit different, obviously embracing the culture of those different cities that you probably would never go to if it wasn't for a football game. But yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, and now the icing on the cake is qualifying for Europe's sort of top tier competition, and those ties that we've now drawn out today are some real glamour ties at Villa Park to look forward to. But yeah, the whole journey and the transition, and we were talking offline, weren't we, just off recording, just saying about the changes in the teams just from 3 years ago. It's quite dramatic, and the scale of the improvement under Unai has just been top notch.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of those. We'll get again. We mentioned again 3 or 4 years ago, and just to bring that up again, looking in goal again, Tom Heaton, Matty Cash, is he still there?
Yeah, Matty Cash still there. Started last week against Arsenal, but went off injured early in the game. Pulled his hamstring, I believe.
Hmm.
Quite a reoccurring thing with Matty Cash with the hamstring injuries. So
Hmm.
yeah, left us quite short at right back at the moment, because we're relying on a young kid that we brought in, so Costa. I'm not even going to pretend I can pronounce his second name. I'll have a go, but it's sort of Nedeljkovic. So yeah, relying on an 18-year-old there at right back for the foreseeable, unless we sign somebody in the next few hours until the deadline tomorrow. But
Hmm.
yeah, you look at the team there, though, there's still some real core players throughout our team to this day. So Ezri Konsa, at the heart of our
Hmm.
defence, made such dramatic improvements since he's been at the club. Under all managers, to be fair, he's a bit of a Rolls Royce defender. He doesn't really put a foot wrong, and the dramatic improvement with Ezri for me has been his ability to play out from the back under Unai. But yeah, then you look at John McGinn, core of our midfield, still what a bargain he was. Sort of
Hmm.
2.5 million, I think it rise to with Hibernian for him. Obviously, Jack Grealish is left. Wesley is now, well, he was at Stoke
Tyrone
last
Mings.
season. Tyrone Mings
Ty-
is still there, injured at the
yeah.
moment, but on his recovery. Shouldn't be long until he's back in first team training. Then Ollie, again, core of our sort of forward line. But then, yeah, you look after Ollie Watkins on that list there. So, I mean, some real good servants in that list. Connor Houlihan, El Ghazi, Trezeguet as well scored some important goals for us, especially that season that we got
Mhm.
promoted back to the Premier League after 3 years away. Towards the end of that season to stay up, he scored some real important goals against the likes of Arsenal, Crystal Palace. But yeah, the turnaround, and then yeah, you can see Ross Barkley there, who we had on a season-long loan, who's now back with us permanently after a few seasons away. But yeah, the turnaround in that bottom half of that list there has been quite dramatic.
Yeah, it really has. And it's gone along again with you getting Europe and obviously getting Champions League. And just on that as well, with the players that you bought in, you think you've had one of the best transfer windows in the Premier League. So as well as the deal as the deadline's going to close in the next couple of days. Are you happy with the squad? Because again, we just looked at the amount of games for Champions League, and then you've got the cup games, and then they're all going to start to pile up. Do you think you've got a strong enough squad yet, or do you think Emery's still hoping for a couple more signs before the window closes?
I think everybody connected with Villa is hoping for maybe at least one more, maybe two, but I'd put it down to maybe one more on deadline day. We'd see what we can do. I think, like I said earlier, that right back situation now and the centre half situation is somewhere we need to add that depth. We're stacked on the left hand side with the options we've got, but the right hand side is not as strong. So yeah, I believe if the Twitter rumors and the journalist rumors are true, we're strongly, heavily linked with a Feyenoord player who can play right back, and he's quite versatile to play centre back as well, Gertruda. So hopefully we can get him through the door. But yeah, the squad depth has been the one thing we've really improved over the summer in terms of the options that Unai has now got. And we're seeing that even in the early games, the tweaks and the changes he's made, and he's making changes a lot earlier in the games. There's been some really savvy purchases. The standout purchase, obviously, is Amadou Onana from Everton. Big money, but he offers us something that we haven't really had since we've been back in the Premier League in terms of that real physical type of player. Has a lot of good attributes, so good on the ball, so calm. But again, just that physical height presence in both areas is going to offer us a lot that we've been missing. Douglas Luiz obviously went to Juve, and he was such a great servant for us, great player. Amadou Onana is going to be playing in that position, but he's a totally different sort of player in terms of his characteristics and his technical abilities. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops with his relationship with Tielemans in the middle as well. But yeah, the other standout there is Ian Maatsen, who in the first two games has started as a bench player, but he's been coming on after sort of 70, 65 minutes. I think he came on against Arsenal. So yeah, there's options there off the bench now as well. The two young players that we had from Juventus in the Douglas Luiz deal, they've both now looks like they're both going out on loan. Samuel Ealing Junior has definitely gone to Bologna for the season on loan, and it looks like Enzo Barrenechea is going to Valencia on a season-long loan. So obviously that's taken a little bit of the depth away, but both of those didn't make any of the two match day squads so far. But yeah, we've added some depth, and obviously Jaden Philogene has come back after a year at Hull. I don't think Unai really wanted to sort of let him go, and we had the first option of him, so I think we triggered that, and he'll be obviously adding competition to Leon Bailey's side on the right, but he can also play on the left, and we saw him do a lot of great things for Hull last season, so hopefully he can show when he gets the opportunity all his attributes, because he's a tricky, pacey player, and he's got a lot about him.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen too much of him. Saw a little bit of him last season, but I don't think I managed to watch him when Leicester played Hull in the game. But again, from what you're saying as well, it seems like a strong squad. And again, the fact that you're even take it back a few years, the fact that you even go, do you know what? We'll loan a player out to Valencia. We'll loan a player out to another team in Europe as well. It just shows you how far you've come in such a short period of time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Ealing Junior one, obviously, he's going to Bologna, but it's not a step down in terms of if he's going to be playing first team football for
Champions
Bologna,
League.
he's going to be playing Champions League as well. So the experiences he's going to get and the opportunities to improve his game. And obviously, the big thing for Villa has been the players that do come in. You're not worried about where they are at the moment in their game, because Unai just improves players. And he just gets the structure, and obviously the players will say it in the interviews themselves, the amount of time, the attention to detail he puts in with the team meetings. They're always in team meetings, and they're longer and longer as the season goes on, because of how much detail he tries to get through them and offload all the information that he wants. He just improves players, and that's the biggest sort of compliment I can give him. He's not worried about who comes in. If you'd have said to me Barkley at the start of the summer, I'd have probably gone, oh, he didn't really set the world alight when he was on loan at Villa. But then he's had a really good season at Luton in the Premier League, and he's sort of changed his position slightly from being that sort of number 10 ball player and sort of playmaker to now a more sit-in defensive midfield role. But I think under Unai's tutelage, he'll just go on and improve his game again.
Sorry, mate. I've just lost you there.
Sorry.
No, I think
didn't know if there was a delay.
No, I don't know. Did it look like on your side it just completely froze on my side? But I heard a little bit about again Ross Barkley again in the tutorage of that. But in terms of Emery and how he's developed like certain players and certain teams, I can imagine he's just become one of your favorite managers of all time. Just from not just in terms of he's an elite manager, but where he's took you from the depths of pretty much relegation or on the relegation battle to fighting for Europe is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you talk about favourite managers of all time, you always have that sort of nostalgic view about it when you were younger, and you have those favourite childhood memories. The likes of sort of John Gregory for me was sort of the first manager. I remember, obviously, he's born and bred Villa, spent time at Villa in sort of a second coaching role capacity when we had the likes of Brian Little, etc. Then he went away to Wickham, then he came back in sort of 97, 98, and he was one of my early sort of favourite childhood coaches just because of his passion on the sidelines, and then obviously that infamous quote when Dwight Yorke left us about getting his shotgun out, and then obviously we went for a few managers between sort of early 2000s and likes of David O'Leary, who got us back up in contention a little bit, but never really got on with the fans. Obviously called us fickle at one stage, and then that was sort of the end of him. And then it wasn't until we had probably Martin O'Neill and we went on that sort of successive period between, and it sort of coincided with Randy Lerner taking over the club, and his investment between 2006 and 2009 were really core strong years for us, and obviously got back into Europe, and obviously going away in European competitions again was nice memories to have. But yeah, in terms of from that position onwards now, there's been some really poor years. And Gerrard came in with the glamour name that sort of Christian Purslow went for. And he started okay. He had a good start, managed to get us a few results that sort of pulled us away from any sort of danger. But then, yeah, you could see it was evident straight away in his sort of first real season after he had a pre-season that there was no real sort of way of playing. He was relying on, as he called it, magic moments, and he was telling us that we shouldn't be able to go to Chelsea and have a chance in hell of beating them. But yeah, since Unai's come in, he's got to be right up there for me as my number one in terms of just the whole host of changes and the short turnaround that he just managed to change and transform the club, and the mentality around the club now. Everything from top to bottom is sort of so professional. You have to be the best of the best in anything, but on the pitch it's just gone. It's out sort of it's outdone the growth off the pitch in a way, and there's still teething issues off the pitch, but yeah, he has to be right up there. It's just, for me, just a great manager.
Mm-hmm. He is, and I think he's one of the, if you're looking at this again, the quality of the Premier League, we were just speaking off camera about the quality of the Premier League in terms of squads, but also in terms of managers. You mentioned like Unai Emery is like another example as well. The quality of is right through that team and the league as well. But coming into kind of the last game, to take a little bit in terms of the Arsenal game you played and obviously losing 2-0, was it too much of a disappointment? What did you make of the last game you played?
Do you know what? I came out of the game and I wasn't I was obviously disappointed with the result because you always want to win. You want to get off to a good start at home. But in terms of the way we played, I thought we were the better team for long periods. And obviously, Arsenal are always going to come and have quite a lot of the ball, but they didn't really create any sort of eye-watering sort of easy opportunities to score from. And then we had some really good chances ourselves. Ollie Watkins dragged it wide in the first half when it was a tapping for him by his standards. And then again, his header in the second half after it had hit the crossbar and came back out to him. He heads it anywhere else, it goes in. But obviously, Reyes got back up and made a really good reflex save. But yeah, if those chances go in, we're talking about a different result. And Villa are 2-0 up, and Arsenal have got to try and salvage something from the game, and they become a much more open team to play against. But yeah, I wasn't disappointed in terms of the performance. Obviously, disappointed in terms of the result. It's always nice to get off to a good start at Villa Park. But yeah, we've had a mixed start. So we've had one win away from home against West Ham, where it's always been a particularly sort of terrible place for us in terms of results and picking anything up in terms of points. And then obviously we've come at home, we've had a good performance, but we've come away with 0 points. So yeah, we're going into the Leicester game now, and obviously hoping to bounce back after the Arsenal defeat. But again, it's going to be another tough game. There's no such thing as an easy game in the Premier League. And you boys obviously had a lot of change around yourself since getting promotion, and there's some new players in like Jordan Ayew, who obviously we know well at Villa. So it's going to be interesting to see how you guys set up on Saturday. And we've slightly tweaked our style as well from last season, and obviously I think a lot of that's been down to losing Douglas Luiz and this new partnership that's forming in the midfield now with Tielemans, who you again know well, and Amadou Onana that we signed from Everton in the summer. They're playing a lot deeper and inviting sort of the press on. And our centre backs are splitting a lot wider than they were. We used to build last season in a back three where one of our centre midfielders, Kamara or Luiz, would sort of sit into that back three and help build and sort of those little triangles and pick those pockets of spaces, where it's now Tielemans and Amadou and Onana are coming deeper, and then we're opening up space in behind, because obviously your midfield then go and press those two, and we're opening up space for our number 10s, then the likes of McGinn and Morgan Rogers, who has been a real sort of highlight for me for the start of this season. He looks so good, powerful. He's our transitional player. He offers us so much in terms of taking the ball from our final third to sort of the opposition's final third. So yeah, it's going to be interesting on Saturday to see how both teams set up.
Yeah, I can't say I've watched too much of him, but I think he looked unbelievable. He just, for me, it's such a young player. He just has no fear. I don't care what's going to happen, especially as an offensive player. You just want the player to take it. He goes, you know, I'll take everybody on. I'll try and get through. And I think that fearlessness will serve him well. And I think someone like Emery will try and get the just go keep doing that, because you've got, you mentioned the double pivot behind in terms of defensively. Let them do what they need to do, and then we can just sit in behind and clear up the mess if we need to.
Yeah, exactly. And again, Morgan Rogers is another example of how Unai has took a raw sort of gem and just turned him into a colossal player. And now the only thing for Morgan is it's sort of this early, sort of, we saw it in pre-season and we've seen it in the first 2 games of the season at West Ham and Arsenal. But yeah, now he just needs to add those assists and goals in the Premier League. And yeah, I think he's going to be a real sort of presence for us moving forward this season, and probably, hopefully, he stays injury free. And yeah, but yeah, like you say, no fear, really strong, really physical. I think he had Declan Rice and Thomas Partey sort of turning in circles for the majority of the game, and they probably came off the pitch thinking, wow, we've been in the game today and who's this kid, sort of thing. But yeah, it looks a real positive so far.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, would you say that is the player to look out for coming into the game, obviously against Leicester? We're going to be very different. We'll get into some of the potential tactics and how Leicester's going to set up in a little bit. But would he be the player to look out for? Would there be other people you'd want to mention?
Yeah, I'd probably highlight him as our player to look out for on Saturday, especially if he can keep the early season form that he's had in the first 2 games so far, and obviously then you're looking at the likes of Ollie Watkins to really come to the fore and put his stamp on things, get his first goal for the season, because he's had a bit of a rough ride for the first 2 games, hasn't been at his levels, but we know it's difficult when he's been away with England for the Euros, and he had no pre-season whatsoever at Villa, didn't play 1 minute of pre-season football. So it's always difficult. He looks a bit sort of raw around the edges and rough around the edges at the moment, sorry. But yeah, we're hoping that he can hit the heights that he did last season and get motoring again, because he has so much quality. And yeah, I wouldn't want to play against him if I was a centre half.
No, well, again, which I'm not looking forward to be honest, in terms of the game. But coming back to play, you mentioned a couple of times, and I can't believe it's been 25 minutes. We've still not managed to mention him. Youri Tielemans, how's he been for you? Because from what I was seeing from the outside, obviously the transfer, he was looking for a bigger name transfer, went to Villa. Obviously, you've gone and succeeded now. There was a little bit of falling out, I think, initially when he was a couple of comments or something that I saw on social media from him when he wasn't happy under Emery for a bit, and then he just seems to have just turned it on, and now is a mainstay in the team.
Yeah, I think his early transition wasn't as successful as it could have been, but that was due to obviously having Kamara, who was again for half the season before he got injured last season, just outstanding. Has been a real gem of a signing on a free transfer, and probably again another highlight from the Gerrard days in terms of managing to get him over the line for free. And then obviously Douglas Luiz, who has been sort of a staple of our midfield over the course of the last 3 seasons, well, since we've been promoted back to the Premier League. So I think he found it tough in the first sort of early stages to get himself into the team, and he was a bit part playing coming off the bench, and probably wasn't happy with the amount of minutes he was getting. And then again, it all comes back to the amount of competitions you're in, doesn't it, to be able to keep squad players happy. But yeah, since sort of the back half of last season, he's just, again, I don't know if it's down to Unai in terms of what the sort of information he's been offloading to him, but he just looks a completely different player. Looks fresh, looks hungry. He's a big part of that press as well. His energy, but we know his quality on the ball as well, and his eye for a pass. Yeah, he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment. So yeah, and hopefully long may it continue, because we all know the qualities that he possesses.
It's really strange to hear you talk again. I hear you. I think Leicester fans, when you hear Pressing and Tielemans, they were 2 completely opposite things. Well, for when we saw he was, I remember when he first got him on loan from, I think it was Monaco. He was blowing after 60 minutes. Just did absolutely. He's like, this guy needs to get off. Unbelievably talented. And then we kind of developed him. And I think the year we got relegated, obviously you got him on a free. He was just, I think, well, as you know from when we were just speaking off camera about the year 15-16, the team, our team just gave up. And our team had enough qualities. You've seen the quality of Tielemans. Madison's obviously gone and smashed it over there at Tottenham. You look at the likes of Barnes has gone to Newcastle and not quite set it alight, but you can see the quality there. But it just shows you again, we just need to blow that squad up and rebuild it. But I'm glad he's doing really well for you. Be really interested to see how he comes back. I've got a feeling when he comes to the ground, he's going to be, majority of fans will be fine with him and clapping him off for what he's done, but some fans will be booing. I think because of how toxic that season was, and I think you know firsthand from like 15-16 and where Villa just all went wrong. There will be certain players that will just boo. I think there'll be some of the hardcore fans that don't let things slip, if you know what I mean, rather than some of the other, I won't say more casual fans, but the older fans that will be like, yeah, that's fine. He did really well for us.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously you've got some great memories with him, that FA Cup final goal as well. But like we were saying earlier, football changes so quickly, doesn't it? And people have short memories, and it's all about the here and now. And like you say, that season you go down, people don't want to remember them, and obviously they only remember the bad parts of those seasons. And we always say it, don't we? It's easy to say, but if you have a bad start to a season, then sort of the rot sets in, and you just fall into that momentum of sort of going to games, and you don't see the energy from a player or the passion, and that's a collective, isn't it, of any team that gets relegated. So yeah, but yeah, he's transitioned so much, and he's a really important cog to our team now, and the overall sort of strength of the squad. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how he comes back, and the Leicester fans sort of take to him. I hope they do give him a round of applause. But yeah, we know what it's like with Jack Grealish coming back in terms of the way he left us, and yeah, he gets a mixed response now. But yeah, those big players at one stage, but obviously when they're involved in a relegation season, it's never easy, is it?
No, I think again, Jack Grealish is a great example of he handled himself well. He went for a massive fee. You then used that money to reinvest in the squad. It couldn't have gone any better. But as you mentioned, there's always going to be fans that are like, you left us in a bad position. You're from it. You should have done more. But again, that's just football. Partly though, in their defense in terms of Leicester fans, we could see that a lot. He down tools goes, I don't want to get injured because then that's going to screw up my free transfer, which I kind of understand. But at the same time, as a Leicester fan, I'm going, we pay money, you've got to perform. But yeah, coming into I think another player that I don't know if you don't know if you know too much about him, but again, went from you, came to us on a free transfer, and today he's actually announced retirement. Mark Albrighton. I don't know if you know much about again from your experience or going back to that. I don't know if there was much thoughts or anything from your perspective.
Yeah, what a player, Mark, and what a career he's had. Wish him really good retirement. He was obviously came through the youth setup and academy at Villa, and went on to play over sort of 100 games, make 100 appearances for us. We definitely let him go far too easily and far too early in his career, and we know what happened after that. He went and got himself a Premier League and FA Cup medal. So fair play to the chap. Obviously, his first love was Villa, but at that stage he had to move. That the club didn't seem to want him or want to sort of put a contract in place for him to stay. So it was a shame we lost him in his sort of core sort of positive years, but yeah, he's gone on to have a remarkable career and done some magic things at you, and then obviously it's been a bit of a journeyman since then on loans and stuff like that at Albion. But yeah, what a player, and it was great to see him come through the youth academy, and he's such a nice bloke. I remember seeing him at an away cup game at Burton, and he was so pleasant, approachable, lovely bloke, and obviously a Villa fan through and through. So yeah, wish him all the best in retirement. But yeah, what a career he's had, and fair play to him.
I agree, and I'm with you. I think my only thing is it's too early to retire at 34 years old. I thought he's got another couple of seasons in him, but I was kind of not gonna lie, for his own sake, because as you mentioned, he's such a nice guy. I've not managed to meet the guy, but he's such an, as you mentioned, he's so nice, and it felt like he's got more in him. I don't know if he came and there wasn't many offers for him, and then he's decided to retire, but for me that came as a little bit of a shock because I still think there's a really good, hardworking player in there that can do the Championship or League One could definitely do something.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on sort of what is important to him. He might have sort of life things going on that he wants to focus on. He might have other offers from elsewhere in terms of that might be coaching, punditry that he wants to sort of have a look at. But yeah, it does seem too early for a player like that. And I suppose it depends what level of the game you want to sort of retire at and go out at. Do you go and sort of try and be a journeyman in the lower leagues, in League One, League Two, and sort of still make good money on a weekly basis, but you're not really playing at the level you were playing at, or do you sort of call it time on it at that stage where you're still at a decent level, you've had a good career, you're in your mid-30s, and you've got other offers elsewhere in terms of other life experiences. But yeah, such a nice bloke, and yeah, probably one of the nicest blokes you'll meet in sort of in football sort of terms. But yeah, wish him well.
Yeah, we definitely agree. And I think it's weird to think, especially in a footballer nowadays, that just played for 2 clubs and then retired in this modern era where, again, well, 3 including West Brom now. But again, very, very minimal in that sense. Just going back to the game, I'll probably show you. So you mentioned there's some tactical changes that Unai Emery, but it's still a 4-4-2 that you're pretty much playing.
It changes in and out of possession. So some people look at it as a sort of, we're playing like a box to box midfielders now, with the two deeper lying midfielders with Onana and Tillemans, and then you play sort of the McGinn and Rodgers in the 10 position with a bit of a gap between them, but that's where we want to receive the ball in space to obviously turn and transition the play. And then obviously you've got Ollie Watkins as the striker, but then you sometimes have McGinn on the left of that and Bailey on the right as a free. But yeah, McGinn's more of a midfield general sort of player, but he has that high energy and can play that sort of higher left-hand side role. So yeah, it just depends. In and out of possession, we alter it, and you never know with Unai, because he's always tactically tweaking things, and he always sees patterns before any of us see it. He's just brilliant at that sort of thing. But yeah, it does really depend in and out of possession, and again against the style of opponent, and in terms of what your strengths will be compared to Arsenal's strengths will be a lot different. What you'll offer will be a lot different in terms of possession based play. So he'll tweak it as he sees fit. But yeah, predominantly it will look like, when they line it up on a Sky Sports or a BBC, it will look like a 4-4-2 with Bailey out wide and McGinn out wide, and then Rodgers supporting Ollie Watkins. But yeah, in sort of essence, it's a lot different to that on the actual day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And again, it's something that in general now, football is not paid in terms of formations. It's, again, is it out of possession? Is it in possession? It's so much more complicated than or as our last manager said, this is football, it's not PlayStation. And it's kind of that similar ilk. I've got a feeling coming into this, we're going to set up, because of how strong you are. I've got a feeling this is how we're going to set up, and also the rotation that we did in midweek. So we're going to probably play a 3 in midfield, a 4 at the back, so 4-3-3. Mavididi Fatau, so we probably changed to probably a 4-5-1 in defense. I've got a feeling that we're just going to sit there and soak up pressure from you, and then try and hit you on the counter. When you look at that team again, do you think that, again, because there's probably let's be honest, the pressure is not the pressure, all the expectation is on Villa to probably win this game, especially against a team that's just coming up from the Championship. How do you see like that, or feelings like coming into the game?
Yeah, that's an interesting one that I alluded to earlier. And obviously, you look at that team that you've put up there on paper, you've got a lot of pace in those wide positions on the counter attack. So we'll have to be mindful of that. And then you've got an out and out finisher in Vardy, who probably isn't at the level he once was at, but you still have to be mindful of him, because he's such a fox in the box, isn't he? And he knows where the back of the net is, especially against Aston Villa. But yeah, I was interested to see how you might set up in the midfield with obviously the addition of Oliver Skipp from Tottenham, and I think he played in the week, didn't he, in the League Cup for you. And the one I was expecting that might start as well, Jordan Ayew, after signing him from Crystal Palace. But like you say, those probably those wide positions you're quite strong in, so it might be that again he's adds you some depth from the bench. But yeah, I think the game will be won in those midfield positions. You're free against our sort of box to box 2 and a 2. So it'll be interesting to see how the game develops. But yeah, you've still got some really good players in there, and I think the way you've set up and the transfers you've probably made, you've given yourself a good chance of survival. We were saying off air, the most important thing, and like we knew it when we came back up after 3 years in the wilderness in the Championship, the most important thing was just staying up, and it's not being disrespectful to a team, because I know there's no easy games in the Premier League, and you'll be fighting for every sort of kick, every minute of the game to try and get a result, especially at home. And obviously, I don't remember too many in my lifetime cracking results at Leicester. We had one, obviously, last year when we qualified for the Conference League, with Bertrand Traore. Sorry, not last year, the year before, when Bertrand Traore scored in the last minute top corner, and that was obviously near the end of the season. So yeah, there's never any easy away games in the Premier League, and it does help set the tone in terms of what you're going to go on to do in the Premier League, especially for Villa this season. We've had such a great season last year, and we really need to follow it up and prove that we're not just there as a one season wonder. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup, and there's some sort of obviously great additions for you from the bench as well as us as ourselves.
There is, yeah. And you mentioned Ayu again. Ayu played midweek, which is probably why I've put Jamie Vardy in. Again, as you mentioned, he's still a player that's, I think he gets over. I think everybody knows about the story and go, "Oh, Jamie Vardy's story," but I think he's in what, the top third. He's got 137 Premier League goals now. It's like a really high number that again people forget about. But I think Ayu will probably go on about 60 minutes because again we need to rotate. Vardy, as you mentioned, getting older. And he probably is going to. Ayu's going to come in as a striker if we don't sign one before Saturday, which again I highly likely they play. But something I wanted to mention in terms of obviously you've gone from all the way down there to all the way up. In terms of your expectations for the season, I'll bring it up now. But where do you think that like Villa will? Again, it's hard to say right at the beginning, but it just from your gut feeling, where do you think Villa will finish coming into the end of the season?
It's a tough one. I hate making predictions because they always come back to
Yeah,
bite you
I'm
on the bum. But yeah, I suppose a lot depends on managing the squad, managing the minutes of those players, especially when we're going to be playing high level Champions League games, hoping to sort of go strong in the domestic cups as well, because the trophies are what you remember at the end of the day. And when you've got a manager of the ilk of Unai, you want to put some sort of silverware on his sort of time at the club, because that's what you'll remember in 15, 20 years time. So I'd love to say top six again. Again, Europe for me. If we qualify for Europe in any guys, again, it's a progression. We're still there. We're still playing European football. We've managed the Champions League games well. So yeah, but yeah, there's sort of two folds to the season, because now with this Champions League format, there's an extra 2 games in that with the 8 games, that 4 away, 4 at home. So it's all about managing the minutes of the players. If you pick up any key injuries, we know how much that can sort of derail a season as well. Obviously, Kamara last season, halfway through the season, picking up a really bad injury. Mings and Bundia were out from the beginning again, which made our achievements so much sort of more sort of impressive. It was just so impressive that we did it with the players that we had out for long periods of time. I mean, Jacob Ramsey last season, he missed, probably played about 10, made 10 appearances over the course of the season due to injuries and knocks. So yeah, again, it's all about managing those injuries and having the depth to sort of go deep into competitions as well. But yeah, I'd be happy with a European competition again, and I'd think that would be progress for Villa again. But yeah, it would be great to get back into the Champions League positions and really upstep the establishment once more. And the story and the narrative from Sky Sports and other major sort of shows might change then, especially if Newcastle did it the season before us, Villa did it, and then, like you say, you could have a Brighton or somebody doing it. You never know. So yeah, be good to upset that establishment once again. But yeah, I'll be happy with top 6 this season and a
I'm
good
with you,
run.
and I think I'm with you, and I think some of the, as you mentioned, Newcastle and yourself, and it was us at one point, and I think as a fan outside the top six, anything that's kind of, it seems like a little bit of a win for us. We know that in is kind of a team outside. You know, when you get to the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of a cup, and you've got one of the last six, the non-top six teams, and you think that's my team I support all the way to the, hopefully through to winning the cup. And that's how I felt about Villa last year. I'm so excited, so happy for you, because we tried to get Champions League, didn't work. So happy for you to get it. And I'm hoping that you and Newcastle, and if somebody else can be there, can disrupt that. Because do you, even last year, in terms of, you mentioned the media and things like that, do you think you were, I know every football fans think they're overlooked, but I think Villa were, until the end of the season, I don't think people took you as seriously as they probably should have.
Yeah, exactly that. But to be fair, I don't mind when there's no noise around Villa. I prefer to be going under the radar and just going about our business quietly, and then surprise them at the end of the season. Yeah, you had the likes of Gary Neville, didn't you, and Jamie Carragher. I think Gary Neville was still saying that Man United could catch us when they were like 12 points behind, and you're thinking, well, you don't put much faith in Unai Emery and the way he gets things done. But yeah, I much prefer it when there's no outside noise. To be honest, I don't mind going under the radar. They can talk about us as little as they want, as long as we're getting results on the pitch.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think I'm liking the fact that we're not in the picture for the exact reason. A lot of people doing predictions of things, and they've had us rock bottom of the table. And I don't mind that because it makes sense with a manager going obviously to Chelsea, backroom staff going, our best player, which again, as you know, it's kind of, when people say Jack Grealish was your best player, and it's like, well, yes, but it's not. You've got a feeling that they're not just going to get relegated once that's the case. But it's this look of they only have one player. Once that player goes, they're finished. They're done. And I think the same thing happened with. Do you think the same thing happened with the kind of Killingers Hall that I'm seeing now as kind of Jack Grealish? Is like a very easy narrative, which this requires a lot more actual asking of fans rather than just going, "Oh, what they're finished for."
Yeah, exactly that. I think obviously the Jack Grealish transfer to Man City at the time, as gut wrenching as it was, yeah, I remember seeing him on sort of the concourse as a young kid with his dad and his family, and then you see him going on to be such a top player at Villa. And you think you're getting to a stage where you might be able to compete again, especially in the top half of the table, and you just want him to sign that contract extension and bring in some players that can help him go to the next level and play in those major competitions. But I think the one thing that we have to remember about Grealish at the time, he was really sort of mid 20s when he left Villa, sort of approaching 25 probably. And you're thinking at that stage, well, if Villa aren't ready to progress at the speed of what Jack Grealish wants to be competing in. Obviously, he wanted to play Champions League football. That was the biggest thing for him, and he wanted to go and win things. So you don't begrudge him for making that decision. But yeah, at the time it was gut wrenching. But obviously, he's got trophies in his cabinet now, which he probably wouldn't have if he was still at Villa. But on the opposite of that coin, on the flip of the coin, it has enabled Villa. I think with Grealish, we're very much, our output was a one player output in terms of we were always looking for him. He was the one that was going to create that special moment or unlock a defense that was going to lead to an assist for another player. And I don't think we really sort of thought about the whole team in terms of what we could do and how we could unlock teams. And obviously, the money, it probably helped us preside over the PSR rules and financial fair play, and offered us the opportunity to sign 3 players, probably 4 players, if you put in sort of the contract values as well. Some of those have been more successful than others. Obviously, the likes of Danny Ings didn't really turn up many trees, but obviously a good serviceman for us. Scored a few important goals. But then you've got the likes of Leon Bailey, who came, started really fast, then got injured, and then didn't really progress at the level we were expecting him to until last season, where he just had such a dramatic improvement in his all-round game. Again, I put it solely down to Unai in terms of the information and the detail he puts into the players and the level of time he spends with them. But yeah, it enabled us to do a lot of things we probably wouldn't have been able to do if Jack Grealish was still a Villa player. And there's probably Villa fans that still anchor. I saw a few rumours this summer, and obviously they're only rubbish Twitter rumours, but and sort of unknown journalists of social media came out with a few potential loan deals back to Villa. I think a few Villa fans would anchor for him to come back one day, but at the rate we're progressing, is a Jack Grealish going to be the right player for us if we're still at that level in a couple of years' time when he's ready to move on from Man City? I don't think he'd be at the level we'd need to be buying at or sort of getting a player back on a free.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think, again, you realise, again, we're in a similar position with Kindersby Hall. We didn't want to sell him, but because of PSR, we had to sell him and get involved. So similar kind of thing. And you hope these players with the level of Man City, and even at if you keep up this, then there's not much of a downgrade for Champions League football. If you keep that up, we're hoping that once Kindersby Hall, as Chelsea, the whole Chelsea project at the moment, once they probably inevitably spit him out, then we're looking, hopefully, he'd come back to us. But I have to say, but Ian, again, it's been a pleasure, man. I've really enjoyed the chat. In terms of final things, how do you think the game's going to go coming into Saturday?
I think it's going to be a tight affair. I think, like you said earlier, I think we might be heavily in possession of the ball, and it'll be up to us to unlock you. But yeah, mindful of that pace that you have on the counter attack, and obviously you're the home team, so the fans will be right with you. Back in the Premier League, it's always nice to have sort of a West Midlands, East Midlands derby as such. So it's going to be
another
probably
narrative, isn't it?
yeah.
From people that aren't from the Midlands going, well, your Midlands clubs, there must be rivalry. In reality, it's like, no, because we're two separate entities. In reality, when Wolves did really well, we were really happy for them. When you were doing really well, we were really happy for them, because again, it's just from that narrative. We are two separate entities. We care about Nottingham Forest, Derby, and Coventry was our main.
Yeah, and it goes in cycles. Like obviously, the season we were trying to get back out of the championship, we created somehow between Wolves fans and Villa fans this sort of fake rivalry, as I call it, that we never used to have. We used to play each other in pre-season friendlies, and it all used to be really friendly. It used to be Wolves and Villa on the one side, and they were happy to play each other and just do pre-season friendlies and stuff like that. And then it'd be West Brom and Blues on the other side that would hate the two of us, and obviously vice versa. But then because we were in a cycle where they were in the top two and probably a stronger team at the time, we were under Steve Bruce and we were trying to compete and get into that top two. So the sort of the competition was sort of made around that. And I think obviously Steve Bruce said something about their Portuguese players not being able to sort of hack it in the winter, and then it escalated from that. And then since that day on, there's been some really bad blood between Wolves and Villa, and obviously it's probably dying out a little bit now, because again, the last season we've been fighting over different things, and Wolves have really sustained themselves as a Premier League team now, and look a strong unit every year. They probably would like to progress and get back into Europe. They had obviously that trip into Europe the one season where they did really well under Nuno. But yeah, I think it's dying its death. But yeah, like you say, with Leicester and Villa, yeah, there's not too much rivalry there from my standpoint. But yeah, it's always one of those, because it's a short journey across the Midlands, the East Midlands, and obviously there's always it's always high energy, isn't it, with Leicester and Villa, I always think. And then obviously we played a couple of important games, like the League Cup game in the semi-final that took us to Wembley with a last-minute goal with Trezeguet. But yeah, I'm expecting a really tough game on Saturday. I hope we can get the 3 points, obviously, and obviously you boys will be hoping the same for you guys. But yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as an easy game in the Premier League, and it's about how we, as probably on paper, that the favourites for the ties should sort of go and command and develop. But we know games are won in situations. You only have to look back to last week against Arsenal. We missed our 2 gilt-edged chances, and then they put their only 2 chances away. So football's, as much as you can talk about expected goals, expected assists, and possession stats, etc., football is won in those small marginal moments, isn't it? And those small inches that sort of make you a successive team on the pitch. So yeah, expecting a fully competitive game. And obviously, I hope we beat you, but I hope Leicester go on to do what they need to do to stay in the division, then build on from there. Because, like you say, in the sort of bigger region, East Midlands, West Midlands, it's nice to have all the teams up there competing. Because you look at the likes of London, how many clubs they've got in the Premier League, with the likes of Brentford now and Fulham, that have obviously made themselves sort of strongholds within the Premier League. I think they've got like 7 teams, haven't they? And then obviously you're looking at the Midlands, and we're not as great. But yeah, it'd be nice to upset the establishment and really go on to have a good season again. But yeah, fully expecting a really good game on Saturday, Neil.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. Again, at the end of the day, as long as a couple of things, I don't mind again with the kind of team that Villa are at the moment. I don't mind losing the game. I'm hoping it's just not a trancing. So I think a 2-1, even if we lose, I think I'm happy with that, as long as the team get in a good performance. As you know, from managers that come in, they take a while to we'll know the wind. We'll have the players we have for the rest of until the next window, and we're still understanding the style that Steve Cooper wants. And I think we will be okay. But again, as long as I'd love a draw out of this. But again, I can't see us getting a win. I'd love to get a win, but I can't see us getting a win. A draw, or again a 2-1 loss would be fine for me, as long as we build that momentum for the next season. But Ian, yeah, really appreciate you. Thanks for coming out. It's been a really good chat. Anything else you want to finish on? Anywhere else people can find you?
So actually, this has been sort of, I went into semi-retirement from podcasting. But yeah, this has been my first one for a good while now. So it's been great to be on the show. And thanks for having me, Neil. It's been really good to talk and catch up after what we say. Was it 2020 when we probably last spoke? And I know we did a few forums outside of the Villa and Leicester things. We did some around England, didn't we? And different stuff like that. But yeah, it's been really great chatting and reminiscing. But yeah, it's been great to be on. So thanks for having me, and I hope you enjoy the game, but not too much on Saturday.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Again, all the best for the rest of it, and I really hope that again you go and get that top six. Anything that disrupts that, I think any team that goes and actually disrupts that top six, I'm all there for. So best of luck with that, and yeah, everybody make sure again like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you all in the next video. So goodbye.